Of We are so glad you have joined us on today's Minirth Clinic television broadcast, and as always, a privilege to come into your home or wherever you're watching this program. I'm Jim Cress, and joined today by Christian counselor Ann Beal from the Minirth Clinic. We're going to get into this area of boundaries for the next couple of days, and it's an area all of us need to look at in our lives. Maybe for some of you looking in, areas of personal and very healthy boundaries that you had established or that were just there as a child, a young person, young adult, were crossed over by somebody. Maybe now today as an adult you find yourself saying, here is my space, here's a boundary I have, or my husband and I, my wife and I, our family have these boundaries and people cross over them, often maybe for you, family of origin members. We'll talk about that as well. Glad you've stopped by. And as we begin today, I love topics when we can say absolutely everyone can benefit from this topic, not just, well, a few people. Everybody needs to have healthy boundaries.
Right. I think most people's lives at times feel really out of control. And by seeing that, you can't make someone do what you want. There's a lot of frustrations in friendships. And just having some tips to help you know when people are crossing your boundaries and when to stay in control of what's yours, what's mine, what I'm responsible for, what you're responsible for, helps really with the frustration and anger, and also helps you not be so mad at God, because here you feel like you're doing all the right things and you've gone through all this being a good person and doing this and that, and your life's just still not good, and people are still not doing what you want them to do. So by knowing what is your responsibility and having boundaries, it can really guide you to have a healthy life.
I like the way you put that, this whole issue of what is yours, what is mine, and maybe some of what is ours. I don't know, in every relationship we're in, and sometimes we're too busy or so busy owning stuff that's just not ours. It's not about us, is it? Or we're trying to make stuff that truly is ours, and we project it on to someone else or transfer it over there. We'll talk about that. Healthy boundaries, that's our focus. We'll take our first break of the day and tell you you're watching the Minirth Clinic, brought to you by the Minirth Clinic in Richardson, Texas, as a matter of caring. A couple of important phone numbers here for you to call if we can help you in any way. Maybe some of you are struggling with establishing and having those healthy boundaries. I want you to give us a call. Now, stay with us. We'll get into the heart of our discussion on boundaries when we come back. The Minirth Clinic in Richardson, Texas, here for you as a matter of caring. The Minirth Clinic has a commitment to excellence in many areas, maintaining a professional Christian staff, compassionate, individualized patient care, and comprehensive quality treatment programs and services. Through our medical and counseling practice and outreach programs, the staff maintains a conviction that the most effective way of helping an individual with emotional problems is by treating the person as a whole. The Minirth Clinic is led by Christian psychiatrist and best-selling author Dr. Frank Minirth, a diplomate of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and the American Board of Forensic Medicine.
Dear friend, here at the clinic, we try to have a Christ-like caring approach with the behavioral tools. Sometimes medicines can also really help and make a world of difference for depression, weight loss, panic, anxiety, sexual dysfunctions, ADHD, insomnia, dementia. Are you aware that there are new and many times very helpful medicines in these areas that bother so many people in the Christian world today? Again, new medicines in depression, weight loss, panic, anxiety, sexual dysfunction, ADHD, insomnia, dementia. They're not for everyone, but sometimes they can make a world of difference for the cause of Christ.
Call the Minirth Clinic today with a struggle that you're having or the struggle in the life of a friend or a family member. The Minirth Clinic is committed to providing the optimum level of patient care at an affordable cost. Many major insurance carriers will cover the patient counseling services. Call the Minirth Clinic today. Ask for information on individual counseling, group counseling, medical management, marriage and family counseling, or information on our child and adolescent services. You need to make the call today. The Minirth Clinic, toll free, 1-888-MINIRTH. 1-888-646-4784. The help you're looking for is a phone call away. The Minirth Clinic, 1-888-646-4784. We are back on Minirth Clinic Television. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Cress with Christian counselor Ann Beal from the Minirth Clinic. We're talking about having those healthy boundaries. Establishing healthy boundaries is one thing. Living within those boundaries respectfully is a whole other story. We'll talk about that throughout this series dealing with boundaries, and glad you've stopped by. As we begin this discussion, we said earlier kind of in the open that it's an area that all of us can benefit from because everybody needs to have healthy boundaries. And I think of those people maybe looking in today right now who from a very early age, as a child, a boundary was crossed, maybe sexually or some other inappropriate situation. I think of others who as adults today say, you know, maybe from reading a book, listening to Christian radio or TV, I've realized I need to have boundaries, and I have some of these boundaries established, and just because they're established doesn't really mean anything for some people. They cross right over them. We're going to get very practical and very helpful. Let's talk about the whole concept of boundaries and what a boundary looks like.
Well, the best way to describe it is if you're a property owners are real clear what their boundaries are of their land. And we have it marked off. My husband and I are out looking at land right now trying to figure out how big it is, and you mark it off. And so that is kind of what we're talking about. You have actual boundary markers of what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. And so knowing what that is really helps you to know kind of where I stop and where you begin, where my responsibility stops as far as what I can make you do or how I can change you or what I'm responsible for helping you with or not helping you with.
And let's take that analogy and carry it out to a conclusion that a lot of people probably live by, and that is they say, I track with you on that analogy. In our home, we have an 8-foot high privacy fence, or there's one, I think it's about probably 10 or 12 in our neighborhood, literally. It's like a fortress around there. My dad comes down from Ohio to visit, and he'll say, I've never seen anything like this. People are just boxed in and all that. Some people, the idea is, hey, not only is this my yard, and as one particular neighbor we have, don't even know who these people are, but they're just down the street, and they have this like 12-foot high fence, incredible wooden fence, and two Great Danes that are in the backyard. I know they're in there because I've been up in the tree playing with my kids or something. These incredible big dogs. And the idea is, you know, we don't want anybody coming around to mess with us. With boundaries, that's not what we're called to in the Christian life, is to say, here's my boundary, I'm in here, I don't want to have anything to do with anybody, just back off, leave me alone. We're called with all those one another commands, so that kind of messes it up just a little bit.
Well, you know, Matthew 22 is a great scripture to use because it talks about loving yourself and loving your neighbor and loving God. And in order to love our neighbor, it says love your neighbor as yourself. And that's really very self-descriptive, that first you have to love yourself in order to do that, and you have to love yourself well, make good choices for yourself and good choices for others. But people have trouble doing that because sometimes boundaries are really hard to see. And in that example with their high fence and their dogs, you got a real clear picture of what they wanted from you.
Yeah, there's no even need to have a beware of dog. You hear them if you go anywhere near the fence. It's like, let us alone. Right.
But see, some people, you really can't see them. They just don't have boundaries. They'll say, I'm boundaryless. We have women, we're working at the women's shelter, and they'll say that. They'll go through the list and they'll come up and say, well, I'm just boundaryless. I don't have any. They are very compliant. They pretty much do whatever anybody wants them to do because they're afraid. They're afraid to be themselves. But God does call us to be who He made us. We're all very unique and different for a reason, and we show who we are through those differences. And the boundaries really help us to say, no, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. I don't want you to touch me like that. I don't want to eat that. And one of the mistakes we make with our children, and I've caught myself doing it many times, is to say, oh, you like that. Oh, you like them. You don't mean that. And we negate what the child is saying. And what the child is really saying is, I'm different from you, Mom. I don't like that. And really learning how to do that with our children is a struggle. And those are children. Just think how it is with adults when someone says, I want you to do this work for me, or I need you now. And you have to say yes or no based on what you can really do.
And to use a 75-cent clinical term, narcissism, there does seem to be a certain level of narcissism in all of us. The idea of Narcissus was the guy who went in mythology and looked down at his reflection in the pool of water and then stayed there and died, I guess, the rest of his life because he was so in love with himself. There are times that we are so, in a sense, in love with ourselves that your boundary, as healthy as it is, maybe the more healthy it is, the more it might aggravate me to say, well, hey, wait a minute, this is the way I see it, and you're saying, that's okay, I respect your difference, this is the way you are, but I don't see it that way. Often, your boundaries, using us as an example, may set off defenses inside of me.
Right. My boundaries are to say that, you know, I may not like things that you want me to do, or I may not like things that you like. And so it's the most important thing for us to be healthy is to let that person know who we are, what we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want. Ephesians 4 and Galatians 5, though, also call us to do that lovingly. And that's very important, to just say what we want or what we like in a loving way, to not be, because some people can take this too far, and we don't want that to happen. We want you to be able to state who you are without being a boundary intruder, which actually is walking over other people's boundaries, trying to be yourself. To be careful with that and be loving, to say, no, I don't want that. No, I don't like that. And if we start with our children doing that, then they really learn how to set boundaries well. And so it's really important as adults that we learn how to do it in ourselves.
Part of the problem is, and we're going to touch on this when we come back from a break, is not having the ability, or maybe having the ability, but choosing not to put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and say no. That's hard for a lot of people. Maybe you looking in today, it's hard to tell somebody, a spouse in some cases, a parent, even though you're an adult and they're an adult, you feel controlled and manipulated. Someone else in a situation in life to say, no, that's not something I will choose to do. We'll say more about that when we come back. Dr. Les Carter joins me for just a moment during this break. I want to talk about his anger workshop. It lasts for 6 weeks, coming up here at the Minirth Clinic in suburban Dallas, Texas, starting things off August 20th. That's a Thursday night, going from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And, you know, we think of anger sometimes, it just must be somebody out of control, like the picture of the person cut off in traffic or something, or the person not getting their way. But doesn't anger really have many, many faces?
Well, you know, Jim, anger does come out in many different ways, and sure enough, that person who has the bad temper and goes into the rages, that's a person that has an anger problem. But have you ever thought of the individual that pulls back and withdraws and just will go days, perhaps, without saying a word to somebody? Have you ever thought of that person as having a problem with anger? Well, sure enough, anger comes out in so many different ways, and one of the ways that you can learn to manage anger is first know what it is that we're talking about when we discuss the emotion of anger. We can be talking about your frustrations, your irritabilities, even your hurts and your disappointments. And so one of the things that we try to do in the anger workshop is to get you to identify some of the ways that anger can show up in your personality, and specifically why it's there. For example, there are many reasons for it being there. Sometimes a person has a lot of hidden insecurity that pushes their anger. Sometimes they're just running with a great deal of pride. Many times they have a real powerful control myth that causes them to go into this anger kind of mode. The deeper you have a sense of understanding regarding this emotion, then the more you can make plans to make it work for you rather than working against you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carter. Again, the Anger Workshop with Dr. Les Carter coming up Monday, I should say, August 20th. It's a Thursday night. Don't show up Monday. Thursday nights. It's going to be for 6 weeks right here at the Minirth Clinic. You will love this. Bring a friend along. Explore some of the issues with Dr. Les Carter. For more information, 1-888-MINIRTH, 1-888-646-4784. Back with you on Minirth Clinic Television. You just saw there the graphic inviting you to call to purchase one of the one-page digests, or more than one if you'd like. If you'd like ordering information, how to purchase one of the digests by Dr. Minirth, and some of the team here at Minirth Clinic, including Beal, who's with us, co-authoring the one-page digest on boundaries. Information's available at 1-888-MINIRTH. There is a charge for these. You'll find out about that at 1-888-646-4784, and they'll be able to tell you at that number all the other one-page digests that are available. Talking about how to have healthy boundaries, Christian counselor Ann Beal with us here at the Minirth Clinic, and I'm Jim Cress. Thanks so much for stopping by. Let's talk about, again, what a boundary is, and we want to be real concrete with much of what we're saying so that people can say, okay, I see that's a boundary and that's a boundary. What is a boundary, and give us some examples.
Well, again, if you're thinking of property line, how do you define who I am? One of the ways is to use words, to say I don't like that, and we've talked about that. Saying no, that's a clear boundary. It's also yes is a boundary. So words Your skin is a boundary. Only you decide who touches you and who doesn't touch you. Distance, either geographical, where you actually leave a situation because you feel like you could blow up or you would handle it badly, or you might just not want to be with that person anymore.
Which isn't always terribly a bad idea. For some people, they say, just as a caveat here, I know part of my own journey, there is a temptation sometime, or has been, to say, not only will I move away geographically from family, but I'll kind of blow them off as I do.
Right.
It's kind of like walking off the ship and firing, shots back as you go, saying, you guys are just this and you're that, as opposed to saying, and sarcasm always chases away the heart anyhow, as opposed to saying, to yourself, not necessarily to them, there are some issues that I'm struggling with, I feel pain, and at best say to them, I just need, if they ask, something I need to do to move away, but not hating and resenting people. Christ would never call us to that, although there can be a place, because he even talked about leaving father and mother, that we can separate geographically.
It's, Christ talks about love a lot. Love's patient and kind and not selfish or self-serving, but it is also challenging and confronting, which is what he did at times. And those times is when the distance comes into place, but remember, it's a temporary boundary. Geographical distance, which is actually leaving, or emotional distance, which is getting cold, shutting down, just needing some time to really think things through. And it's hard for anybody to do that. When someone says, I just need time to think about this, or I just need time, and you want an answer right then.
Well, a lot of couples,
yes.
Let's face it, will have that. I know my wife and I have struggled with that for years, and through a lot of therapy, I think we don't struggle with that much anymore. But I'm going to tell you, there was a time we struggled so much, mainly me. She would say, we'd be talking to you, I think we just need to cool it, and we'll come back and revisit this. And I would have no part of that, saying, I can't, I feel I've got to settle this thing now. And I have learned somewhat, if you will, the art of being able to say, no, everything's not settled. Right. I do have a sense of tension here that I'd like, but that's okay for right now. We'll settle this thing later. And couples get, so, not just couples, individuals in relationships, but especially in marriage, you get to the point where both of you see in red so much that it's not going to do any good to continue anyhow, is it?
But see, that's also a boundary line, because you're different from that person, and
that's right.
You need it right then, but they're not ready, and they can't even think it through well enough to give you an answer. And so what they're saying is, I'm confused, and I need time before I can help you. And so by forcing yourself upon them, can bring it into a real big blow up. Or whatever happens is not what really could have happened. It's just out of confusion and your pressure.
Okay, let me get controversial for a moment. I like doing that just from time to time. And never, folks, I promise you, for the sake of just being controversial, the whole idea and area of submission. We've heard a lot about that. There are denominations coming out saying that they want the women, they're taking a biblical stance. Clearly, the Bible does address this area of submission. Can a woman submit, let me put it better, can a wife submit to her husband in saying, no, I don't want to talk about this right now, or no, that's not something I can participate in, or fill in the blank, not again being disrespectful, but say, no, this is violating a personal boundary. Can she still be doing that feels healthy, and yet be submitting? Your thoughts?
Well, yes, definitely. I feel like submission is doing what God's called you to do. And the husband's role is to love her and love her well. And when he does that, she can follow. Main thing is to always be aware of what you're doing is loving. But the loving thing might be to take time to do, when he says love yourself and love others, you love them the best you can. And she's saying she needs time. And some of us, not me of course, can be very manipulative.
No self-disclosure here, please.
No. And want, just time out of anger. But it depends on mainly always what your motive is.
That's the key, the whole idea of what's going on in the heart, isn't it? We will come back with more on today's Minirth Clinic television broadcast. Christian counselor Ann Beal joining me today as we're talking about how to have healthy boundaries. Some of you have had boundary lines crossed, in some cases many times. You're hurting because of that. Some of you have kind of grown cold in your heart saying, burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. Won't have any part of that again. And your heart is shut down. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Minirth Clinic in Richardson, Texas, here for you as a matter of caring.
The Minirth Clinic has a commitment to excellence in many areas, maintaining a professional Christian staff, compassionate, individualized patient care, and comprehensive quality treatment programs and services. Through our medical and counseling practice and outreach programs, the staff maintains a conviction that the most effective way of helping an individual with emotional problems is by treating the person as a whole. The Minirth Clinic is led by Christian psychiatrist and best-selling author Dr. Frank Minirth, a diplomate of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and the American Board of Forensic Medicine.
Dear friend, here at the clinic, we try to have a Christ-like caring approach with the behavioral tools. Sometimes medicines can also really help and make a world of difference for depression, weight loss, panic, anxiety, sexual dysfunctions, ADHD, insomnia, dementia. Are you aware that there are new and many times very helpful medicines in these areas that bother so many people in the Christian world today? Again, new medicines in depression, weight loss, panic, anxiety, sexual dysfunction, ADHD, insomnia, dementia. They're not for everyone, but sometimes they can make a world of difference for the cause of Christ.
Call the Minirth Clinic today with the struggle that you're having or the struggle in the life of a friend or a family member. The Minirth Clinic is committed to providing the optimum level of patient care at an affordable cost. Many major insurance carriers will cover the patient counseling services. Call the Minirth Clinic today. Ask for information on individual counseling, group counseling, medical management, marriage and family counseling, or information on our child and adolescent services. You need to make the call today. The Minirth Clinic, toll free, 1-888-MINIRTH. 1-888-646-4784. The help you're looking for is a phone call away. The Minirth Clinic, 1-888-646-4784. Back with you on Minirth Clinic Television, everybody. I'm Jim Cress, Christian counselor, and Beal with us today, talking about how to have healthy boundaries. There is a digest on this, Minirth Clinic digest on this very topic. Ann Beal co-authored with Dr. Frank Minirth. If you'd like ordering information on that, call us. Tell you what, this is an area all of us can relate to. You get the biblical, the practical, spiritual help on this particular topic of boundaries. 1-888-MINIRTH. Now, we have other topics like anger, anxiety, depression, raising healthy teens, parenting problems, teens, PMS, sexual purity that deals with the Promise Keeper acrostic, especially for sexual purity in the lives of men, the chemistry of our emotions, and the list goes on and on and on. Find out information. Some of you may be tuning into this broadcast for the first time. To purchase one of the one-page digests, call us toll-free, 1-888-MINIRTH. And by the way, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and we can help you in any way with our child and adolescent department, you know someone else, their kids are struggling with some issue, someone who needs to see a psychiatrist like Dr. Frank Minirth, one of our marriage or family counselors, I want you to make a call. It's toll-free. Again, 1-888-MINIRTH, 1-888-646-4784. As we talk about and move towards wrapping up today's program, the area of having these boundaries, we've established that there are certain boundaries that come up that you may have in your life that I may say, well, I don't see I need to have that boundary, or that boundary aggravates me just a little bit. We have to realize we are different in the context of any relationship, specifically in a marriage. We talked about that a moment ago, to say, I wonder how do we encourage all of us to take a step back and say, you know, this is a boundary they have. I want to respect that. Even if it aggravates me, I want to respect it. What do you say?
Well, I think God is a great model for us. He had clear boundaries. Whenever he made a statement about what he was going to do, he always followed through on it. And that's a great example for kids, especially, and adults. The other thing is just to realize that he had clear boundaries and was still loving and kind and never sinned. He always made clear statements about what he was going to do or when he was going to do it. And that's a great example for us when we think of boundaries, because so often we think it's selfish. And so it's good to know it's healthy, and God has provided boundaries for us to be able to have a healthy life. And so to remember that. Also, to just think about what it is that you need to actually say who you are. And make a list for yourself. What do I like? What don't I like? And how are people not hearing that from you? So to be clearer.
That's almost like an inventory, isn't it? To go down and say, what are needs that I have? If you put I guess a column down to say, here are things I like or things I don't like. And I think if you took some time, not just trying to do this, you know, when you're dead at night, dead tired, or when you only got a few minutes, but really say, I'm going to take some time away. Maybe go to a favorite restaurant or a place by yourself, and just where you can be and be alone, have the time. Write down things you like, things you don't like, and then I like your phrase, because that's where the rubber meets the road. How are people maybe trying to violate them? What will that accomplish for the person? Very practical way looking in today.
Well, the main thing is if you keep letting people cross your boundaries, then your ability to love is greatly affected.
It is.
Because you let them and you let them and you let them, and then you become resentful and bitter, tired, discouraged, frustrated, and can really get sick. And so boundaries are there to help you protect your ability to love. To say, I'm doing this because I love you, and this will help me not feel resentful and not feel angry. And so we don't want those to come out.
We're talking about boundaries. Christian counselor Ann Beal with us on the Minirth Clinic television broadcast today. And again, some of you, you've had those boundaries violated. Even now as an adult, you try to have a boundary and someone seems just to blow it off and not respect it. And you're having a real difficult time with that. You know, at some level, you should be having a difficult time with that. More than just working on it on your own for some of you, you'll need more than that. You'll need some professional help or somebody to sit down with you to help you gain perspective. Are the boundaries you're drawing yourself even healthy? If we, again, can help you here at the Minirth Clinic, I hope you'll call us toll-free, 1-888-MINIRTH. That's 1-888-646-4784. Another area that I want us to deal with here just before we're out of time on today's program is the importance of, I guess I would say, prayer. I guess I would say talking to God to say, God, the Holy Spirit dwells within us. Scripture says the Holy Spirit, He is our teacher inside, to say, just help me have discernment and wisdom to know if this is a healthy boundary or that is a healthy boundary, as maybe they're getting alone to do this.
Yeah, spiritual boundaries are so important. And God, because your faith in God helps you know that, well, God's truth is a real boundary, a clear boundary, knowing His truth. And you pray to Him to really help you have direction and emotion and wisdom with everyone to be able to see where your boundaries are being crossed, how you're crossing others, just to give you the vision of what you're doing wrong. And God can help you with that, and you should start with prayer.
When you talk about the fact that God can help you with that, you've established He's our model because He has boundaries Himself. This is not some modern day invention.
No. I feel like for me, God has really, He gives me insight almost every day of how I cross other people's boundaries. And more of that, because I've really learned how to define mine. And I started just being worried about mine, but in time, He's really given me more insight of how I cross other people's. And so for me, that's my strongest prayer, that I will really acknowledge other people's boundaries and not intrude upon them and hurt them and damage them.
I like that. It's the idea of not just looking at yourself in a sense of saying, how have people violated me, but to begin to take somewhat of an inventory as well. How have I or am I today crossing people's boundaries? And that's not good. We're out of time for today's program. You've been watching the Minirth Clinic, brought to you by the Minirth Clinic in suburban Dallas, Texas, as a matter of caring. We'd like to help you specifically with whatever it is you're struggling with today, and I invite you to call. Ask about how to purchase one of our digests or to see one of our counselors or doctors, 1-888-MINIRTH. I'm Jim Cress for Ann Beal. We'll see you next time.